Hi everyone. In this Captain's Insights, I would love to share with you how Christina and I wrapped all of our content wishes for a daily posting schedule into a neat content skill that doesn't create AI slop. And it's going to be a fresh first time setup. I know I've shared this before for Pirate Skills, but Pirate Skills is a very grown brand. And now you get to see it, how to create a new skill for a very important topic and that a lot of people are very annoyed by. Like, how the hell should I be posting on a daily basis? After today, it's going to be super easy and I'm going to share everything with you, including the word-by-word skill we created for Bridesmaid, or hundreds of lines of code. Before we dive in, let me just show you how this works. So let's switch to Claude Code. Over here, I'm in my Bridesmaid folder, and all I do is now I can invoke this content skill, which is saying content, and then I say something like, hey, let's do the plan for the next calendar week and pitch me the best topics you can come up with. Now, this is going to read through all of the context that I provided in the skill. Christina and I did a very long form interview that we're going to talk about in a second. I'm not using the smartest model, but a good one, Sonnet 4.6. And now it's going to check like which week is it? Is there any special seasonal thing going on regarding like wedding planning in May that it should maybe incorporate? And then it's going to pitch us the ideas for a 7-day posting schedule for a week, which is what we are going for. I think in B2C, daily scheduling is the standard. In B2B, it's 3 times a week. You can always move up from there, but I think that is a very healthy baseline. So let's see what comes out here. Now it's reading through the documents I provided, for example, the research on the themes and topics we want to talk about and certain reference files. And now it's going to pitch us for Monday, giving us even 3 options per week. You can just ask it to do 1 option per week if you want to keep it slim, but I always like to get a menu from the AI, allowing me as a human to be still the editor and the curator and the person who gives feedback. And there's a very clear command of what type of format to do on which day, which platform to optimize for, in this case for Instagram, and for also the image generation that we are going for in terms of the vibe, the layout, etc. So this is the beginning, asking me to make some choices. If I don't want to make choices, I can always just choose option A, which is the preferred one by the AI. But you can already see that this could be highly interested. We would need Christina here to be the judge because she is the bride to be, the intended audience. So maybe she can just say something from the off. From Monday, we have, what do I book first? Venue, date, or guest list? Is this a go or a no-go? It's a go. Very good. On Tuesday, we have the photographer tier list. What do I get for 1,500, 3,000, 5,000, and 9,000 euro? Go, no-go. Amazing. It's a go-go. Maybe one more. On Friday, I think that's our food day, it suggested the wildflower table. Yeah, how does that sound? A bit weird. Yeah, this is something where we would give feedback and say like, what the hell do you mean by the wildflower table? Yeah, and we could check here now and see, is this something that we would be interested in? And this is the process we go through. We create a skill, we put it into practice, and we give feedback to the skill so that not only the content gets better, but the skill gets better for the next week of content. So let's dive deep in and see how that works. For Bridesmaid, I have the goal not to create another grind for myself. Pirate Skills is already pretty grindy. I'm spending a lot of time in front of the camera and am really distilling all of my experiences and my knowledge into, hopefully you agree also, very hands-on content. But this is nothing I can do again for a second, a third, a fourth brand in case I want to launch something like that every quarter. So I have to find a way to turn this grind into a skill. And I think content marketing is one of the most grindy things we can do. It even feels, this is ridiculous for me as a marketer now, saying this, that shipping a new feature, fixing a bug, making an improvement on the website, etc., has become cheaper and faster than actually posting about the same thing. That's ridiculous, right? And the main reason is that most problems that AI solve. Most solutions have been built by developers for developers. Pretty rare that a non-developer finds themselves like building AI solutions that are actually good at the end of the day. So let's give this a try. So my goal is to say, we wrap this in an agentic skill that you can use in Claude Code, as you just saw in the demo, where you can just say /content, and it has all of our soul already injected to it. You can use these skills with anything, with Claude Code, with Cursor, with Codex. This is not like bound to Claude Code. What we have to make sure is that we truly hit the audience nerve. And the question is, how do we get our knowledge, again, from something that is so vague, like storytelling and resonance, as compared to like concrete publishable functionalities in an app? That we have to find a process where we get this into something more repeatable. So Christina and I really sat down, opened the Growth Codex, and went through all of the questions that we propose and associated prompts that are available for free that build the right storytelling framework. So here's, as you can see, a visual representation of the content marketing and storytelling framework that we provide in Miro. Yeah, where we have 4 topics, like why we do things, then what we talk about, how we talk about it, and when we talk about it. These 4 fundamental questions we kind of wrap into a document, and we interview ourselves, led by the AI, to drag this out of us. And this is what really gives most projects like the feeling of heart and soul, because you share everything, what makes it unique for you, what you believe in, what the problems of your audience is, how you want to solve this. And it's the best way I know how to create content and then later landing pages and newsletters that truly resonate with your audience. In the Pirate Codex, it looks like this. You can just scroll through here lesson by lesson. You can grab these prompts and then start talking about your core audience, about their problems, etc., up until everything that I'm going to show you in a second. So let's go back to the article. Now, we really sat down and did this. Last week, we said why your growth strategy should sit in the code base. And in some weird way, building a skill is essentially also saying your content strategy needs to live in your code base, because it affords you this immense flexibility of creating a skill that you can groom over time. So what we needed to do is we needed to take this framework that I just showed you and pour all of especially Christina's knowledge in. And I kind of commented from the groom side, the business side, the tech side, but Christina is at the core of this, and you need a subject matter, a domain expert in your conversation if you want to create something that truly resonates with that audience. It all starts with really getting the persona right. And it was so interesting seeing Christina talk about this. And she said like twice in a row, without doing this very consciously, like, this is for first-time brides. And then, okay, this is for first-time brides. I wasn't even sure yet 100%. Are we going to do this for brides, a little bit for the groom, maybe the real bridesmaid that is supporting the bride, maybe something for the wedding planner? And when you build a story framework, you hone in on one persona. And our most important persona by far is the first-time bride. And this is so helpful. We can now optimize everything through that lens. We can share all of her experience, but it's interesting to pour it in and see how the AI organizes everything. Another big thing that came out of this was the discovery of what is this thing that we are building at the core. And what really came out is that the problem is that there is not one solution where Christina can just pour in all of her thoughts, all of her questions, and just have a guided process to an organized wedding without paying thousands of bucks for a professional wedding planner. This also gave us the opportunity to make corrections to what we previously discussed. I, again, usually recommend talking to AI about it in the code base, everything that you're doing while you're building and later in marketing as well. And there were already some assumptions that Bridesmaid was a bit more like an image generation tool for brides. But we clarified, hey, this is just a feature demo. Yeah, essentially, it's not the core thing. And these kinds of strategic discussions also affect the /strategy folder, yeah, in our context folder, because we're talking about things like pricing and who this is for. And it's a constant relationship that is happening. And you don't want to open 7 Google Docs, and you will never make these updates in 7 Google Docs where you should make them. But telling the AI, hey, we just had this strategic discussion about pricing. We made a significant decision in this communication, and I want you to update this also in our pricing document. And then maybe create a to-do that we adjust the pricing in Stripe. Very, very tightly knit is this process. So you have to imagine that Christina and I really sat down and had like a 2-hour interview with each other, where we went through all of the prompts from the content area in the growth codex, and we wrap everything into a skill. So an agentic skill that a large language model like Sonnet or Opus or GPT-5.5 at the moment can take in as context. But how does this look like? And I went a bit nuts here, and I think this is the most valuable hidden secret here on this article. If you click on this, you actually see the entire skill. The skill consists of a couple of files. The central file, the SKILL.md, that has all of the steps in there that needs to be done to create everything for an entire week, from the planning, what you just saw, but also writing the copy, generating the images, planning it into our scheduling tool at the right dates, at the right time. Let me go through them quick. And you can take your time when you read this, in case you're not listening to the podcast, just to show you how much density goes into a skill. And I tell you, this is the biggest difference between people who use AI to create slop to people who create content with the support of AI that you think like, holy shit, this hits the nail. So let's dive into the first document. The skill is just called content, and it has a description so the AI knows when to invoke it, even when I don't explicitly do that. And here we go. It starts with step 0. Always read these 4 reference files. Yeah, in this case, it's one skill where we don't necessarily want to have progressive disclosure, where you kind of hide the unnecessary parts of the skill. We're going in one step, plan the whole week. We need the full context, so please read all of the 4 files. That's the story, the theme, the voice, and the cadence. It also gets additional files that are relevant in the code base to review. And then we go in here. Step 1, determine the request shape. Does the user want a single post or just a Friday review of the batched posts? The skill is intended to later either work in 2 modes. Interactive, in something like here, Claude Desktop, where we invoke it and when we have a back and forth session. Or number 2, to be handled by an agent like OpenClaw or Hermes, where the skill will create all of the content and the responsibility of the user is to do a Friday review before those posts get scheduled and published. Yeah, so we're ready for that. But the normal assumption is let's do everything for 1 week in one go. Then number 2, apply the day's format specs. So every day of the week has a topic. So a Monday is always an editorial carousel that guides a bride with the topic of like where to start. And there are certain aspect ratios we want for different formats that we can change if we want to. But it needs to know, I need to create something for every day of the week and I need this format. And these are like the hard guidelines that the AI needs. Then step 3, like apply the voice rules. We have very, very clear rules what we want the AI to do and what not to do and how to write and how not to write. Yeah, we, for example, want always to write from the perspective of the bride, not talking about the bride, like in the third person. And because one of the special things with Christina and me is we are currently in this process of planning a wedding. So we can do this. Yeah, we can share our own experience and in our content marketing go straight from the perspective of the bride. You can have this as you like, but we always have some guiding voice rules in our content. Next, we wanted to produce the deliverables. First, the carousels for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then standalone images for Thursday, Friday, Sunday. And then there is a special format for Saturday where the AI cannot help us, where Christina and I have decided we need one absolutely non-fakeable format where we share our current process, where we are with our wedding. And we agreed to ourselves that whenever we do something, we all in the planning, we also need to be able to do this in the app because Christina wants the all-in-one app where she can do everything. Yes, so we better eat our own dog food. So then it creates everything for the Friday batch, all of the titles, all of the copy, all of the descriptions. It looks for hashtags if these are still relevant. And then step 6 is it is honoring our autonomy contract. I treat skills like babies in the beginning. You need to review everything that is happening, every piece of copy that is generated, every image that is generated, every carousel. You later will evolve into where you trust it in certain formats. And then you can say, just create all of the 7 slides for this and that format and all of the copy. Just present to me the final form because there's a 9 out of 10 chance that you get it right. This is what you have to earn. This is not what just happens from the get-go because the skill needs feedback. And maybe some later point, stage 4, we say, here, OpenClaw, do the content planning, just ask us what's going to happen on Saturday where we deliver our piece of the content. You do 6 pieces, we do 1, fair deal. And then we not only see that everything is created and published correctly, but also that the performance is right. But we are not there yet. So treat your skills like babies, they grow into children, young adults, and then hopefully reach a point where they are autonomous grown-ups and where you are just like the basic guideline on the left and right, while in the beginning you stay very tight and focused. We also have a step where it checks like all of our no-goes, what they're not supposed to do. For example, because we are from Germany and the AI gets that, it tended to always create also very German-specific content. And this is what we will do for our German social media accounts, but this is for our international English social media account. All right. And then last but not least, when in doubt, always surface like clarifying questions. Yeah. If the AI is not sure if something is correct or if it's like on the verge of like hallucinating something, instead of like voicing that hallucination, use the opportunity to ask a question and clarify that with us human editors. So this is still just the one file, the markdown file, but this references the story, the theme, the voice, and the cadence. And I'll just scroll through and explain the broadest strokes so you know how deep this goes, but you take the time, and it's not necessarily to read that all to understand how the process works, but I thought it would be valuable for you guys to actually see how a fully established content skill, how Christina and I imagine it, would actually look like in real life. So let's open the story skill. The story really is about the audience and who this content is going to be created for. There can be secondary personas, but that should be a definite primary persona. What the challenges are in terms of like problems, and on the other side, also what goals are they trying to reach? How is your product different from the others? And be very explicit about it and have a back and forth conversation about what could be a really convincing way to do this. For example, for us, it's talking about things that only people who are living through this can understand. Then wrapping that into one of these newer agentic experiences that not very many people who have gone through the whole wedding process also have applied to building a real product. Then we describe our solutions, like how we solve the user's problem. This is content gold. You can just talk about their problems and how we solve them and inspire them along the way. But we also make sure that the AI knows what is the commercial offer, so it understands what call to actions it can make, sometimes just suggesting for the free content, sometimes pitching our free trial, sometimes pitching the full product. And then it wraps everything up in the storytelling by putting it into a transformation story. I very much believe that content is fundamentally a transformation story. I always have this idea that my user is here in their current situation, which they're not happy with, and they want to go here, and the content is bridging the gap. And then here is our product. After we solved some problems that happened like before the core product, this is our content. We help the bride to go from I want to plan a wedding to all of the madness that is wedding planning, selling her the premium solution, and then continuing on with her life. Yeah, this is the transformation here. And also how this whole process is feeling. What else do we have? Yeah, in the themes and topics you want to discuss, if you are like writing a book about your topic, what would be the main themes of that book? What are the big chapter brackets that have many, many little subtopics inside? But we decided, and you don't have to copy this, one day a week, one topic. This is good for social media. But if we later consider doing this also for SEO, we can go much broader and more detailed. But these are the themes we also believe are very social media friendly, specifically on our primary platform, Instagram. So all of these themes are attached to certain weekdays and then clearly explains what's inside. Then we explain the voice we want to use, the tone of voice, the language we want to use, the channels and what they serve for, how we speak and how we do not speak, and also give certain examples for certain platforms and certain content formats. The richer this environment becomes and the more actual content history you have in your code base, the better this skill will become and be able to reference real examples and will become specifically better for your project. You can see style guides and tones, because if we decide for some content to create AI-generated images or use code like in Remotion to create videos, then there needs to be a consistent style and consistent colors and typography. You can always have fun on social media, but it's always good if the AI has a very good sense. And when it produces a result you do not like, you can actually give it feedback. You don't like that color, you don't like that font anymore, and it will consistently change all future not yet published content. So last but not least, there is the cadence. We want the AI to understand that our core rhythm is a week. At Pirate Skills, the core rhythm is a quarter, then a month, then a week. But here in a B2C app, we try to keep it simpler. There might be yearly seasons for sure, but the core rhythm is simply a week. On Monday, until proven false by the audience, we will talk about how to get started as a bride on day one. And then we can test these. We can test the topic ideas and we can test the formats in which we can wrap those ideas. And this I will often change over time, because it will come out. If we talk about food, nobody cares. But if we talk about wedding dresses, everyone cares. And this we can only find out by launching, having a high post frequency. Also one of the reasons to post 7 times a week, because you learn so much faster. I might get some algorithmic penalty for posting too much, but it's worth that for sure. All right, I said I go through this quickly, but that gives you an idea of what is contained in the skill, and you can take your time and do this. Now, what should you do when you have this skill? The skill needs to be read to some extent by you. There's always a chance that it misunderstands you. We had this example where Christina was talking that she wanted the all-in-one solution, but the AI understood a hole-in-one plan, like golfing, hole-in-one. Yeah, and this is not the analogy we were going for. Yeah, and we needed to correct that. So whenever weirdness comes up in this level 1, I still review every single piece of content time. It's the most valuable thing you can do for yourself and for the agent, to give feedback to the skill and not only ask to fix that one piece of content that you didn't like, but also to fix the skill. Or if you noticed, damn, I also want to write a blog post. I also want to write a newsletter, to create additional references and upgrades to this content skill that will then help you create the articles and the newsletter exactly the way you love them to be written. This allows us humans to stay the editor. The AI becomes the deliverer of choices, and we are the curator and the editor that provide feedback. And this is the fundamental idea, that I also pitched in the article AI Founder Mode. If you're interested in that, you can read more about that here. And just to give you some examples, like on even our first readback, we saw that it suggested like doing 7 slides, but then you also have to generate 7 creatives. Each of them could have a significant mistake in them, creating more iterations. So we limited that to a maximum of 4. It got the aspect ratio for carousels wrong. It thought it's Instagram, everything needs to be 9:16. But at the moment, and this can change, of course, over time, the aspect ratio for carousels are at a maximum of 4:5. Instagram would have probably cut it, but these publishing tools, especially that we plan to use, if it receives the wrong aspect ratio, then it will have an error. And we want to have an automated process. So we could immediately see that and fix that. We also immediately saw, hey, you don't have a style guide. You were creating good copy, but the creatives that you generated, they were pretty all over the place. It was interesting what came out, but not consistent. And I don't believe in having a too perfectly polished grid on Instagram. Definitely not. But at least you should be very opinionated, on how each format should look like and what the general vibe is going to be if you want it to look not only professional, that is one thing, but also like trustworthy and something a bride can aspire to. If they take care so much of their content, I hope they take as much care of my wedding. And when you give this feedback, you think about it like in 4 levels. You first need to review every piece of content, no question about it. It's going to be crappy and you give it feedback. Then you let it create a whole week of content, for example, that you just approve. And then you find on the next level formats that it just gets right every time. So you give it autonomy on that one and just review after the fact. And then you allow it to fully run autonomously, analyze the result, and just inform you about the feedback in your quality control after the posts are being published. And we all try to get there. Here, this full OpenAI, here's the skill, here are the tools, here are the API keys, let's go. But that is something that is earned. And if you do not earn that, you just enrich the internet with more AI slop. And I don't want to be part of that. So what do you get from taking the time to review? You will see that you get less annoyed by the skill and by the output. This is my number one thing. You will take less time. You will take less iterations. For example, creating a nano banana image at the moment is around 15 cents for Instagram friendly size. If I need to do 5 iterations, it's 75 cents, but I can make it hit the nail on the first try. And the AI can review itself to some extent, but at the end of the day, we are responsible for the output. But what is also happening, what I observe is, especially also for more established workflows like on Pirate Skills, that I make a lot of decisions while doing my content. And these are also strategic decisions that affect my acquisition strategy. For example, after video 4, 5, 6, I was like, damn, this would be a cool podcast. Voila. We now have a podcast. We have a new channel. We have a new website. We have a new podcast. This is a big commitment to start a podcast that came out of such a review. And actually doing the stuff that you see while you're actually working makes sure that you're improving stuff that are not just invented, that are not just an additional task that you came up with on a long weekend listening to some other YouTuber like me. You need to find out your things that work for you specifically. And I would say it's now your turn. This is how you get to build your own content skill. Ideally, you start in a really fresh session in something like Claude Code or Codex. If you already have a code base, work in that. Otherwise, use the folder where you also have set up your strategy if you did it already last week. And then go into the Growth Codex and look for the prompts. Let me show you one more time where you can find them. When you are on pirateskills.com, you just go here to free, to the Pirate Codex. And first there's the Builder Codex, and then there is the growth codex. And here is the content marketing and storytelling part. Here is where you just start with lesson 1. You get a little overview. It just tells you to start the chat, and then boom, you start copying the first prompt, going through each of the prompts on all pages in here. And then you will have a wonderful system set up like I have. Ensure that during this interview process, you have your domain expert with you. So without Christina, I couldn't have done this. No chance. Or I could have done it, and then it would be crappy male content for female brides. And no one wants that, I believe. Then, after you have gathered all of this information, you wrap it up neatly in a skill with the skill creator that you can find provided for free by Anthropic. And then you run that skill. You give it feedback. You do one full shipping process. You ship a real piece and be annoyingly explicit about all of your feedback and give it good examples of what you like if it keeps on suggesting not so good stuff for you. And then decide over time, which level are you on? Are you still on permanent review? Do you already let it create a whole week? Do you let it create a partial week? Or are you already on full autonomy inside of something like Claude Code? In my opinion, you're done when you have a functioning skill that you can use in Claude or any other agent, and that really helps you create your content on a weekly basis, is a total supporter on your side. Like you have a dedicated professional in your team helping you do all of this. Be patient, let the skill draft, and you are the editor. All right, that's it for today. If you're interested in going deeper, as always, we have a weekly Pirate Lab. So if you're watching this when it already comes out, then there's always the Wednesday after that where we have a full discussion with our community around it in a live chat on Zoom that we call the Pirate Lab. Then, if you happen to be in Cologne, there is the Vibe Coding Cologne meetup that you can also join via Zoom in a hybrid mode, but I would love to meet you in person. Offline only event is our quarterly Vibe Hackathon event happening next time, for example, on May 20th. Love to see you there. Students even get a very heavy discount, so check out the website. And then we have the Pirate Forge, where we take all of what we are talking about here and actually build and grow a SaaS with you. In 6 weeks of building, 6 weeks of growing. Check it out. The next one starts again in July. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Let me know what you think in the comments, and see you next time. Bye-bye.